I heard Jordan Peterson say this one time. Time has a piece of you, and eventually it has a taste for you, and eventually it eats you.
Some things are hard.
Some things are hard.
Episode 5 of the podcast has been hard. For me, hard could be potentially getting out of bed in the morning. And for you, hard could be running a marathon, right?
But after Adam, his descendants were forced to take on the suffering and the struggle of the world because of the original sin. Now we've learned about delayed gratification because we've learned of the future. Future, like Jordan Peterson said, is where we go to die. In a sense, death is a delayed gratification. And right now, the rest of the time you're working on being patient. And patient is not about waiting for something, it's about finding something to do in the meantime.
We all have our battles and we don't need to compare them once again, but let's embrace the Lord working in them and just embrace this battle head on, and we'll be able to overcome it and conquer it, right? As soon as you say, oh, I've made it 100%, there's nothing else to work on, and you're in that lukewarm spot, things are going to start to not be perfect, right?
We will do what is required. Welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steven. This is
Ethan.
And we are here to talk on episode 5 of the podcast series, The Steven and Ethan Show. And again, episode 5. 90% of people don't make it past the first 3 episodes, and of that 10% that's left over, 90% of those people don't make it past the first 5 episodes. And this is podcast number 5. What are we talking about today,
Right on,
Ethan?
so we're in the 1%. So real quick, we have been trying to do the 5th podcast. This is our 3rd attempt now. The first time the mics died. The second time we ran out of storage. And that leads us right into the topic.
Some things are hard.
Episode 5 of the podcast has been hard.
Episode 5 has been very hard. But we will do what is required. Thank you. We will do what is required. So, tell me a little bit about it, Ethan. What makes something hard?
All right. So we tried to talk about this already. So my thoughts on it are, it is very subjective to their own individual on what is hard. For me, hard could be potentially getting out of bed in the morning. And for you, hard could be running a marathon, right? So it's very subjective. But hard is something that you either think you are not capable of, are not capable of, or... yeah, I guess that's too. If you are capable of it, you might not necessarily want to do it, or there is not. We talked about instant gratification from it.
So delayed gratification comes from these activities. And for anyone who's not familiar, let's hear a little dive into what instant gratification is, Ethan.
So instant gratification is going to be something that is typically easy to do, and you immediately get the reward without having any obstacle or challenge in the way, right? So me taking out my phone and getting on social media could be instant gratification because there is no challenge, or you could say it's an obstacle, but it's not really an obstacle getting in your way to do that.
That's fair. And it gives you that dopamine hit that you're wanting, which is interesting, bro, because you can actually really just take everything down to dopamine. We do 90% of the stuff we do because it gives us a dopamine hit for doing that thing. You drink that water for the dopamine hit. Sure, yeah, it refreshes you, but like realistically, you can go without water for a bit longer. Or food is a good example. Grabbing things with your hands, looking at things, anything that stimulates any senses can be considered an instant gratification activity if it's not hard. I guess, yeah, which is what we were talking about today. So,
and the great thing is, life is hard. Many
Amen.
People might think that's a weird comment, but life is hard, and that is great because it gives us the capability to grow and overcome things, overcome obstacles, and get, like you said, a delayed gratification, which in retrospect is so much more valuable than instant gratification. So what are some examples of delayed gratification?
Well, wow, bro, I just had a crazy thought. So something, I'm thinking, right, Jordan Peterson, how we were listening to that thing that he was saying, the idea of delayed gratification and the idea of waiting for things to happen and work and suffering all came after original sin. That wasn't something that originally was planned for Adam, but after Adam, his descendants were forced to take on the suffering and the struggle of the world because of the original sin. Now we've learned about delayed gratification because we've learned of the future, right? Because we have our own free will to do what we want to do. In the future, like Jordan Peterson said, is where we go to die. Realistically, and this is an interesting thought, how when you die, that's like the sublime, right? It's right before you reach heaven. It's right before you reach God. So in a sense, death is a delayed gratification. And right now we're being patient which is not a bad thing. I'm not looking like at death. We're waiting to die. Eventually you are going to die. It's delayed gratification because once you do die, hopefully you go to heaven. And right now, the rest of the time you're working on being patient. And patient is not about waiting for something. It's about finding something to do in the meantime. So with that being said, delayed gratification comes from when you have more of a mundane death, and maybe it's not, death might be the wrong word, but when you have something that's accomplished that you could almost say is like a sublime thing. So having a physique that's noteworthy or making a certain amount of money, those are delayed. Doing the activities that get you those things are delayed gratification activities. So you have to figure out what to do in the meantime, which are the delayed gratification activities. So that's where you are. Is like, so that's the definition of a delayed gratification.
Yeah, let's use activity. Examples though. Real simple example, right? Running a marathon. Okay, so how do you run a marathon? You have to train for it. You have to overcome obstacles and challenges, and this takes time with obedience and preparation to get to that point to where you can run the marathon. And this is all a challenge. And then once you accomplish this and complete the marathon, you get to the point of where you accomplish something, right? Correct. Like I said, accomplish running a marathon, and that is delayed gratification. So to get delayed gratification, it takes time and typically many challenges and or obstacles. And the way to get through those challenges and or obstacles is obedience, because you can't run a mile once a month and say, okay, I'm ready for the marathon, right? It takes daily obedience and daily discipline. So those are the three things to get to that point, I believe.
So one more time, these three things. Say it like without the example.
Okay, so the first thing is I don't know. It made so much more sense with the example.
All right, we'll cut that, but also, can you give me your mic real quick? Because we're going to cut this whole little part. Just, yeah. We're going to do it like this. That way I can look at it. All right, now put it on that way. You can
see it?
Yeah, put it like exactly where it was before. Or that works too. Yeah. See mine?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I can.
So, my three thoughts on what these are, based on what that video that I put up earlier today was, first, find what kind of crutches you use and eradicate them from your life. Crutches are anything that get you from point A to point B, and in this specific example, we're talking about time. The domain is time. So anything that you use to get you from point A to point B while you're not doing the thing that you should be doing. The second thing to do is to find out what exactly when that moment is you decide to use that crutch, and then to prevent yourself from doing that. So if you, for example, I'm working and then I realize I hop on my phone, that's the moment when that trigger should go off in my head and say, hey, you found the crutch and you're not doing the thing you should be doing. And the third thing to do is to make sure you just continue staying down that path of the thing you're supposed to be doing in the first place, so you don't have to deal with these crutches. And how you said before, crutches can be anything, especially, for example, say you had a situation occur earlier in your life where you were the victim of some form of assault or abuse. A lot of times we tend to use this assault or this terrible thing that happened to us, which in order to learn, bad things do have to happen to you, and we never take that opportunity to learn, better ourselves, and then we use the fact that such and such happened to us earlier in our lives, and we make that the crutch for why we don't get certain things completed. I'm not this kind of person because this happened to me a long time ago, and I've never been able to get over it, which is crazy because no one actually gives you any affirmation for being, or I guess reinforcement for being that person that had something bad happen to them. No one's going to say, oh man, I'm so proud you almost got there, but you didn't. They're only going to be proud of you when you get there. And no matter what kind of excuses you make up when you have the conversation, no one's going to be happy for you when you almost did it, but didn't because of some crutch that took over your life.
Yeah, it would be almost like tattooing it on your forehead and saying, this happened to me, and that's the exact reason that I am where I am at today.
or even a belief of right now, a present belief, right? So I used this one time in this video I made for some of my clients, but basically, I am a zebra, and because I'm a zebra, people will not respect me, or people won't like me, and they almost tattoo it on their head because they'll go out and tell everyone, I'm a zebra, so this is the case. It's a belief problem because I don't care if you're a zebra, and also binary and continuum. To what extent are you a zebra instead of, if not, you're a zebra? And zebra is X. You can fill it with anything you want to fill it with.
And the question here is like, you use the word zebra. Why does zebra have to be a negative instead of a positive? We
Yeah.
can use the things of our past to turn that into a positive, right?
Well, I'm talking about present, what you are.
Or our
You
present,
can't control the fact that you're maybe short. You can't control your skin color. You can't control your foot size. The what you were born with, the stock character you were created as when you spawned in is just how you're supposed to be. That's just
Right.
how it is. So,
Yeah, and let's turn it around the 180, right? From negative to positive and almost embrace things. And this is kind of where I want to go now with the whole thing of things that are hard, right? It's not about comparing them to others, because that's often what we look to do. We look to compare these challenges to others instead of looking to embrace them. If we look to embrace them, it would be a much different result for us and for others.
Of course, of course. Now, how would someone embrace these challenges?
Right. Well,
Give an example.
let's first dive into comparison, because that's what we tend to do, which is very disrespectful in a sense, because how is
To
it
ourselves, right?
to ourselves and to others, I
Yeah.
would say, in a sense, right? So you going through a certain really hard thing could be completely different than me, because you could get the same feeling from something that I get the same feeling from, or get a different feeling from, right? So you, in your car accident, I'm not saying this did, and I don't want this to sound insensitive, could be the same amount of pain for you as me stubbing my toe one day, because I've had life in your eyes much easier, right? But that comparison is not cool in the sense, because it not only creates excuses for yourself, so that's where it's hurting yourself, but it's also devaluing the struggles that someone else has had that mean a lot to them. Even like me saying stub my toe, which that's a really out of this world example, because
Objectively, like those,
right.
You wouldn't compare those, but it's true, because I mean, even in my life, bro, like, I remember being younger, and when me and my first girlfriend broke up, like, man, bro, that was tough on me, and we had dated for 3 years, and I never really had anything bad happen in my life up until that point. I think I had like one close friend of mine pass away. That was about it. But there's people who have, struggled through, breakups in the family, like divorcing. They've struggled through deaths, deaths of friends, loved ones. Like, life didn't go as planned for that person. And, for them, maybe when it came time for that breakup, if they were in the exact same shoes as I was and everything happened the same way, they might have handled it a bit differently.
It would have been easy.
It would have been easier.
In extent, right? And that's why we shouldn't do the comparison. Exactly that point, because your breakup caused the same exact feeling of hurt and despair as someone else losing this, because of your different walk through life, right? Yeah. And it's not okay to do that, because once again, it could make excuses for you or for them, and vice versa.
It's interesting because I went to a private middle school, and in that middle school, everybody had like a pretty decent family life. Like, there was a few people, and like they were kind of looked at as a little bit weird, say their parents were divorced or something like that. Going into high school made me realize, like,
more common.
It's more common that people have,
States.
Or not even just like divorce, bro, but just anything bad happen. People experience death. People die. Like, when I was in middle school, I never imagined that. I didn't know it was like real. I was like, I don't see anyone dying out here. Like,
right.
And now, wow, man, it's crazy how this world works.
So yeah, that's kind of the comparison thought, but now embracing the struggle, right? And let's think about it as simple as this, right? So You go to the gym, you embrace the struggle you have at the gym. You go to work, you embrace the struggle you have at work. You have a girlfriend, you embrace the struggles you have with your girlfriend instead of run from them. Because running from these struggles, if you run from your struggles at the gym, you're going to get smaller, weaker, whatever, fatter, whatever the thought process is there. If you don't embrace your struggles at work, you're going to end up getting fired. If you don't embrace your struggles with your girlfriend, you're going to end up probably breaking up, or it's going to become even worse, right? So the lack of embracing these struggles ultimately leads to making it worse. And then this could lead to deeper hardships or deeper struggles such as depression, anxiety, divorce, right? And these deeper struggles, now that we haven't embraced this much smaller battles, makes it much more difficult to overcome because one, we don't know how to do it, and two, we don't believe we can do it.
That is crazy because I think you're right there. Belief gets taken away as time goes on. And this reminds me of something that I heard Andrew Tate say one time. I lost it, bro. I literally just lost it. Are we good? All right. So,
Andrew Tate said,
yes, you either learn things the hard way or the hardest way. Never easy. So that's human nature. We're either going to learn the hard way or the hardest way. And if you're smart, you will learn the hard way. You'll learn the first time that the thing happens. But if you don't learn and if you don't go through pain, that suffering will eventually end up stacking over time and stacking over and over again. And then after that, you will eventually just have to take the big fall at one point. It'll suck, but it stacks. The suffering, if you don't take on your suffering now, it stacks over and over, time and time again. And eventually it'll just come hit you with one big swoop. And if you're not embracing suffering, you won't be ready for that. You won't be ready for that monster, that beast that you have to face. Goliath, yeah.
And that's exactly what I wanted to bring up right after this. So right, and this is a great story that many non-Christians even know, right? It's just a very famous story, David versus Goliath, right? So David has these hardships where he has to face lions, has to face bears, right? These struggles, and he faces them head on. He takes care of business, right? And then he gets on to Goliath, a much bigger battle, a much more difficult hardship to conquer, to defeat. Right? But thanks to him embracing these challenges that were smaller, he is now prepared. He is equipped to take on Goliath and ultimately conquer this beast, right, that he faced. And let's think about how this could have transpired if David, these tests that God instilled in his life of the bears and the tigers or lions, if David didn't face those head on, how would he have been ready to handle Goliath?
And, I think it's interesting. Like, even if you look at right now, we've kind of had that situation too. We've tried to make this podcast 3 separate times. And the last one was like literally right before this. We got like, 45 minutes into the video?
Probably,
and
yeah.
then
15 minutes were saved of it.
Yeah, it was awful. So basically, we had to just restart from the beginning and start over. But if we hadn't been instilled with a certain level of discipline, there was a chance. Like this, in a sense, you could call it a form of Goliath, right? Like, we were
a challenge.
You remember, right. Bro, literally 20 minutes ago, I was like, oh, bro, I don't want to do this again. But that's how it goes. So it's a challenge, and over time, you just learn to face those. And like I was saying in the last one, I had a situation recently where I woke up, and basically, to keep it simple, shit hit the fan in my business, and it was groundbreaking, right? And there was a side of me that was ready to not anymore. I've kind of changed. I was ready to handle it. I took it on. Internally, I was screaming, but on the outside, I was very calm. I took care of it. I handled it the way it should be handled. But 2 years ago, if I had this same situation, I had started this business, I literally would have quit. I promise you. It was such a bad thing that happened. I would have quit right then and there, but I was able to get on my feet, stand up, and take care of it how it needed to be taken care of instead of letting it affect the rest of my day. Because this is what hard feels like, and this is what we're here for. This is what life is.
Yeah, discipline and obedience are honestly two of the most important things that you can have is basically traits in your life, right? Because without discipline, you're not going to basically help yourself get to that next level. And without obedience, right, you're not going to see the greater purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And understand the greater purpose. And this makes me kind of think about this verse that I saw the other day, and it's Habakkuk 3:17 and 18, right? So 17 goes, though the fig tree does not bud, and there is no fruit on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no food, though the flocks disappear from the pen and there are no herds in the stalls. That's 17, right? So a lot of hard, difficult challenges, right? Your flocks are disappearing, your fields aren't producing food, no fruits on the vines, right? So not a lot of good is happening here necessarily. A lot of hard, difficult things are going to happen, right? And then it says, yet I will celebrate in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation, right? And that is 100% embracing the Lord in these difficulties, and understanding that you will rejoice in your God of your salvation during what's considered very hard, right? And if we would fall more back in line with just the word of that, it would be incredible, right? Because maybe we're not losing this food, but oh, I'm battling this and I'm battling that. I'm battling depression. I'm battling anxiety. I'm battling this conflict with my spouse. I'm battling whatever. You know, we all have our battles, and we don't need to compare them once again. But let's embrace the Lord working in them, and just embrace this battle head on, and we'll be able to overcome it and conquer it, right?
You said something great earlier about like we with the food in the oven and like how we pray. Like, could you want to kind of dive into that?
Right, yeah. So I was listening to this pastor, and unfortunately I was unable to catch his name because it was really just kind of like a clip I saw. But so let's think about this. We have a meal on the table here, and before we eat it, right, we're thankful for this meal. We're thankful for the food on the table. But while we're cooking the food, or it's baking in the oven, we're not thanking God for it. We're not thankful for it to anyone. We're not thankful of ourselves for cooking it, or of our spouse for cooking it, right? But if we started doing this, and this is more of like a metaphor for daily life, right? So what if we're battling depression, we're battling anxiety, and it's kind of being thankful for the process, right? So you're thankful for the food that's in the oven, not prepared. Okay, so let's look at it like this. You have depression, but you're making progress, right? Maybe it's not fully gone or fully healed. Or you have anxiety, and maybe it's not fully gone or fully healed, but you've had less panic attacks over the past 3 months than you've had in the past 5 years, right? We should be thankful for that progress and not just thankful for the end result. And so oftentimes, and I do it almost every day, where I'm only thankful for the end result and not thankful for the progress, right?
It is interesting how that works, because you really, most things in life, and I like to use this analogy
Or a process.
When I'm thinking about what's important to get done, I like to use this analogy. Like, imagine you're downloading something on a computer, and it has like that little progress bar, and you know it's at like 10%, and you're waiting
Right.
for it to keep going. Well, if you're doing something and that thing, you can put a progress bar on it, and it would make sense that it would take some time to, like, you can't get all the progress just at once, right? That's usually something that I'd say you should spend time on. That's something hard. So if you can put a progress bar on it, it's hard in a sense. So for example, say you are reading a book, right? You pick up the book, you open it up, you look at it, you read some pages, and you've made like 5% progress on that. You go to the gym, you hit some weights, and then you look at yourself in the mirror, and you haven't beat the gym yet, but you're still, getting in shape, and you're like, hey, I made some progress. And it's all about making progress, and while you're making that progress, you gain experience, and with that experience, you unlock new skills like discipline. It's like a video game, bro. I like looking at it that way.
Yeah, it's really important to do that, and it brought me back up to something we discussed in the first podcast, right? It's like we see a bodybuilder over here, and he is super big, super strong, and the innate thought for, unfortunately, us instantly goes to comparison and wants to make it seem like he didn't have the same struggles to get there that we would have had, right? He had it easy necessarily, right, to get there, and that's why this comparison is so important not to do, and embracing the struggle is so much more important, because we instantly see this super big guy, And we're like, oh, he must have taken steroids. That's the only way he got there. But we didn't see the 10 years that he did his whole life to get to that point, right? The 10 years of dedication, obedience, discipline to get there. And I'm not advocating for steroids. I'm just using it as a point.
Yeah, that reminds me of the other story that I was telling you about with the one guy that was kind of like David Goggins, runs like triathlons, really big into running, and he has a plaque in his home gym that says "Must be nice." And the reason he has it there is because people come up to him all the time and say, "Oh, must be nice, must be nice, must be nice." When in reality, when no one's watching, when he's winning, when no one's watching, that is what nice is, because that's how you get there. You have to get there by doing the hard things, and people don't tend to see that. You were talking about this earlier with the whole like posting on Instagram. People aren't themselves on Instagram and on social media because the entire time they're just posting and saying, look at the best 10 things that I did this last year, instead of
seeing that struggle or vulnerability to get there.
Yeah.
Right, and that is also a lead indicator to comparison. But I also think that once we get to the point, we were just saying thanks to a guy for not walking in our video the first time. That was what the whole thumbs up was about. He is a cool guy. But anyway, so when we get to that point to where we don't want to keep improving or really embracing hardship, right? Maybe you're at this like still point where you're not making progress, but you're not losing progress in a sense, and that could be one of the most dangerous places you can be. And I would simply describe it as being lukewarm.
Yeah, there you go.
And being lukewarm is terrible. I mean, even biblically it says, with your faith being lukewarm, where you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, it's just awful, because it said this in 1 Corinthians, like, just spit it out, right? Because nobody likes something lukewarm, whether it's like, I want a hot coffee or I want cold water, nobody wants that lukewarm Sprite or lukewarm soda, right? So,
yeah.
So it's important for us to understand that we got to just keep going and face these hardships and really try to be optimal, right? Because life is not where you get to an end point, right? You should not get to an end point with your family, right? Where, oh, my family's perfect, nothing to improve on, or like yourself, like, oh, I'm perfect, nothing to improve on. That's really narcissistic in a sense, but it's also like with your faith is a great example, or like your marriage. These are two, in a sense, your faith, you have to put 100% into. It's almost like a marriage to God in a sense, but as soon as you say, oh, I've made it 100%, there's nothing else to work on, things are going to start, and you're in that lukewarm spot, things are going to start to not be perfect, right? But some reason in your head, you still think it could be.
Well, that's comfortable, bro. When you get comfortable, that kind of thing happens. That reminds me of, we were talking about this yesterday, the SMV.
How did I not think of the word comfortable? Yeah, why?
So SMV, you remember we were talking about that yesterday? Like your sexual market value, like what makes you, a percent. So a lot of times people, guys do this all the time. I don't really know if girls do this. I'm assuming they do it too, but they'll see somebody out and they'll be like, oh, like rate that guy. Like, how do you, and
yeah,
people try to rate
based on looks.
Strictly on looks. And I think everyone should take a time to step back and try to really think about their SMV or sexual market value for themselves and put themselves on a list so they can also see where they are and how they need to improve. So the 5 sections we're talking about here are Sorry, let's start over. The 5 sections we're talking about here are money, body, soul, mind, and relationships. Those are the 5 sections that you need to base your sexual market value on. Body, mind, soul, relationships, money. Rate yourself from 1 to 10 on all of those, and then get the mean of all of those numbers and figure out your sexual market value, which would mean that you are no longer a, you can't just rank yourself as a 10. Like a lot of times I see this, people try to say, oh, I'm a 10, I'm all this and that. I don't think you can be a 10. Ethan said that yesterday. You can't be a 10. So you're 9, and you're probably not a 9. There's somewhere you can improve your soul. If you think you're a 9, you're probably not that close to God. Like let's just be real there. On the body, like you can work out. On your mind, you can learn more and be open and perspicacious with your relationships. Again, how you were just saying, you can't have a 10 out of 10 relationship with everyone. You can obviously improve it. And money, well, that's kind of objective, but if you really look at it, there's some people that have a lot more money than you, or at least are able to afford things. I don't necessarily think you have to have all the money in the world, but as long as you can afford basic things, you're pretty high on that list, but you can still make more. There's always more improvement you can make. So I would definitely write that down. Do like you try to figure out your SMV. I try to do it like every 3 months. I rated myself as a 5.4. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and I have room to improve, and I'm only 20. So, and 5.4 is average.
Oh, really?
I mean, well, like 5 is average, and then you'd say like
Right.
maybe a little bit higher, so 5.5.
Yeah, fair enough.
So sub average is where I put myself.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And once again, that just points to the dangers of being lukewarm, because
Yeah.
then you get satisfied, and then that's when things start to, start tumbling downhill, right? And you're like, eventually it also can show that you quit embracing some hard things because you think, oh, I made it, I don't need to embrace these hard things anymore. So it's like a domino effect or a snowball effect. You stumble all the way down, and you wake up one day and you're like, how did this happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you look in the mirror after like 2 years of not working out, and you're like, how did this happen, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting too is if you are lukewarm, the SMV, like calculating your SMV, can help you determine if you're lukewarm and how to make it better. Bro, I'm sorry, but there's absolutely no way that there's this many trash cans getting rolled around today. Like, this is wild.
Yeah, there are a million trash cans getting rolled out today. But I think, anyways, we have had a great podcast, kind of talked about some really good things today. And Stephen, I would like to hear kind of your final thoughts.
I heard Jordan Peterson say this one time, and it stuck with me for a very long time. Time already has a taste of you. Sorry. Time time has a piece of you, and eventually it has a taste for you, and eventually it eats you. So as time goes on, and how you were saying, you look in the mirror and you're like, what happened? Why do I look like this? It's like time has a taste for you already. And eventually, over time slips by, and you haven't done the hard challenges that you were supposed to do. So my thought here is do the hard things, and like how I learned from Alex Ramosi, and we've kind of based this podcast around, do the hard things. Hard sucks. This is what hard feels like. And if you're in that situation and you don't know what to do, first of all, don't go find another thing to go make yourself feel better. It can be anything, right? I don't feel like doing this. Let's go take a shower. It's always the most random crap that you can think of. Like all these random things. If you're avoiding your work, it's probably a crutch. You should get that out of your life. And you should tell yourself right there in that moment, I will do what's required, and then do that thing. Because I don't think we do enough of that. And if you keep doing hard things, life will get a little bit easier, and you will feel a lot more reward when it's time to receive the reward, right? Like a reward from the phone, it's like, oh, like the reward was kind of nice, but you're frying your dopamine receptors just constantly rewarding yourself with a new video. How about you put the phone down for 2 seconds, you stop playing video games, and you stop going out to bars on the weekend. Focus really hard, especially if you're a young man, like at our age, 21, 22. If you're a young man, you should spend your 20s developing yourself, so that way by the time you're 30 and 40, you're able to enjoy your life, enjoy the fruits of your labor. And my last thought, and I know I kind of went on a tangent here, if you chase a butterfly, it'll run away. Instead, build a garden so the butterfly comes to you, and if the butterfly does not come to you, at least you have a garden. That's my final thought.
That was pretty cool. Who said that?
I think Confucius, but I might be wrong.
Confucius. Nice. That's pretty wise of Confucius.
It was pretty wise of Confucius. You got any final thoughts, Ethan?
Yeah, I think once again, don't compare hard. That's not the way to do it. Instead, we must embrace it, right? And fortunately, like the verse that was read today, we have a God that is willing to walk with us every step of the hardship, and that should make us be honored to have hard things in our life.
Fortunately? I think you said unfortunately.
No, fortunately.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope I said that at least. I definitely meant fortunately no matter what. But I want to leave it today with a verse that I've been trying to learn a few, but one that I learned the other day, and I believe it's Psalms 119:37. Turn my eyes from looking at what is worthless, give me life in your ways. And that verse will definitely help us battle like temptations or hardships.
Amen.
But yeah, right on, bro. Fifth
Nice.
one down.
Fifth one down.
Took us 3 tries, so technically it would have been 5, 6. This could have been the 7th one, but it's not. So
But it's
lucky
not.
you.
But
You'll
this is
have
what
2
hard
more
feels
soon.
like. And now the hard's over, bro. You know how great I feel now that we were able to get the 5th one done? Thank y'all for watching.